Welcome to Hebraic Insights in the Gospels. Join us every Sabbath on Zion Road Radio for a look at the life, deeds, and words of Yeshua Messiah and his followers from the Torah-centric Hebraic perspective they were originally lived and written in.
Stand at the crossroads and look. Ask for the ancient paths. Ask where the good way is, and walk in it, and you find rest for your souls. You find rest for your souls. Oh, you find rest for your souls when you walk in his ways.
Today's program is on Matthew chapter 24. There isn't enough time in today's program to read out the whole chapter, so please get out your Bible and follow along in Matthew chapter 24. How can we avoid following after the anti-Messiah and other false messiahs like him? What is the sign of the Son of Man? And why do we need the sign of the Son of Man if the Son of Man is there? How do we know that the times we're in are the last days? And why is knowing the times so important? Since no man knows the day or hour except the Father, does that mean that Messiah's return will take the faithful and the unfaithful both by surprise? Why or why not? Stay tuned through to the end of this program for Eliyahu ben David's insight on these questions and more in Matthew chapter 24. And now, here's Eliyahu ben David.
Ask where the good way is, and walk in it, and you find rest for your souls. You find rest for your souls. Oh, you find rest for your souls when you walk in his ways.
Shabbat Shalom. We're talking about that day that nobody knows. That's the day when Yeshua Messiah is going to return. He said in Matthew 24, no one knows of that day and hour, not even the angels of heaven, but my Father only. Very, very special and unique day. Now, to get started tonight, it's from Matthew 24, but tonight I want to just hit a couple of things that especially stand out to me at this particular time that I wanted to share. And the first thing that we want to look at here is a section of this where Yeshua is pointing out, don't be fooled by false messiahs. Here's what he said about that. For there will arise false messiahs. And then there's a long amount of information. It says, if therefore they tell you, behold, he is in the wilderness, don't go out. Behold, he is in the inner rooms, don't believe it. For as the lightning flashes from the east and is seen even to the west, so will be the coming of the Son of Man. For wherever the carcass is, there is where the vultures gather together. Now, a lot of people wonder about some of these verses, so I'd just like to talk about this a little bit more. Let's look at 2 Thessalonians 2, and then we'll get back to those verses. There it says, then the Torahless one will be revealed. He's the one called there the son of destruction, whose coming is according to the working of Satan. It mentions with all deception. And it says, Elohim sends them a working of error, that they should believe a lie, that they all might be judged. So, this can explain for us why people would follow after these messiahs, right? These false messiahs, because it's going to be a powerful deception that's going to go out. Now, there's going to be a number of false messiahs. In fact, there are some in the world right now, until we get to the anti-Messiah who is especially pointed out in Scripture. And you might wonder why that would happen, and especially why he's saying this to believers. Why would it really even be possible for believers to go out and follow this one and that one claiming to be the Messiah? Well, it all comes into this idea of knowing the time. You see, when it gets past the time when people are expecting the Messiah, the next logical thing is for them to start to think, well, maybe he's coming in a different way than we thought. Is this not the human mind? And then this will open up the opportunity for others to come along, claiming they're the real Messiah. And you know what? Some of them are going to say they're the reincarnated Jesus. Some of them are going to say that they're the Christ Spirit, and all kinds of different things they're going to say. And many people will follow after them thinking the time is up. So it must be a different way. And this is why he reminds them here that when it happens, it's going to be from east to west like lightning. It's something everybody will see everywhere. And that must be satisfied for it to be the Messiah. Now, we're going to have more to say about that. But look at this. Wherever the carcass is, there is where the vultures gather together. And isn't that true? You know, I hate it when I'm driving down the road to come around the corner and there's some dead carcass in the road and vultures all around it. Don't you hate that? We have that happen here in Texas. You might not have that happen where you live. But the vultures are those people who are seeking after this carrion, this dead flesh. And in a sense, they're going to feed off of these false messiahs. That's really what this is about. The vultures are like these people who are lusting after these false messiahs. And of course, the carcass is the son of destruction, who is the living dead, just waiting for that time when Messiah will do away with him with the breath of his mouth. Well, now, related to this, we want to look more closely at the sign of the Son of Man. And there's quite a long section there where Messiah talks about the false messiahs. So we won't be deceived. Messiah then follows up this warning about the false messiahs by reminding us of the sign of the Son of Man. Now, people sometimes are confused about the sign of the Son of Man, and it's kind of confusing if you think about it, because the Son of Man is there. Why does there have to be a sign? Well, actually, the reason for the sign is because of the false messiahs. You see, if you know in advance the things that are supposed to happen that are all part of the sign, in other words, all part of the way Messiah is going to come, then when somebody says to you, oh, this is the Messiah over here, or that's the Messiah over there, even if there's great signs and wonders, like no doubt the anti-Messiah is going to do, you will know whether or not that's the Messiah, because you will know the things that are supposed to happen, the sign of the Son of Man. Take a look. Then the sign of the Son of Man will appear in the sky. Then all the tribes of the earth will mourn, and they will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of the sky with power and great glory. He will send out his angels with a great sound of a shofar, and they will gather together his chosen ones from the four winds, from one end of the sky to the other. And here from Thessalonians, Adonai himself will descend from heaven with a shout, with the voice of the archangel, and with Elohim shofar. We have other verses we could go into, but for time, we're not going to go into all of them. The point is, the scriptures tell us specific things that are supposed to happen when Messiah comes. So when we have a false Messiah, for instance, we have this person called Maitreya, who some believe is the Messiah. Well, did he come with the clouds of heaven? Did he come with power and great glory? Were there angels everywhere? Did everybody see him everywhere? The sign's missing, right? So we know he's not the Messiah. He's a false Messiah. There's going to be other false messiahs. And if we know from Scripture what makes up the sign of Messiah's coming, that makes it the real coming of Messiah, then we won't be fooled. I've explained already in a newsletter how the sign of Messiah's coming in the final generation works. It's like a fingerprint. The way a fingerprint works is there's many data points on a fingerprint that make it unique. There's no other fingerprint like it. And all of those data points have to be present in order to identify that person. And if they're all present, that's the guy. That's the person. Well, we can apply this to the sign of the Son of Man, which, by the way, is the last sign of the final generation. And here's some of the things, the data points that make up that sign. A dark sun and moon, and heavenly phenomena, such as stars falling from the sky and other things. The sign will be like lightning seen from east to west everywhere. The tribes will mourn. More about that in a few minutes. All will see him coming on the clouds. In Revelation, it says, every eye will see him. How is that even possible? Well, it is possible, and only he can do it. He comes with power and great glory. There will be a mighty voice of the archangel. There will be a mighty sound of a shofar, and angels will actually gather the raised saints globally around the globe, who the whole world is going to watch be raised from the dead. These are not invisible spirits. These are people raised in their bodies. Just imagine around the world, all the faithful saints of all ages being resurrected and ascending up into the sky. Do you think you're going to mistake that? And then the angels are going to take them all by the hand and bring them all together with Yeshua. Now, let me tell you, the anti-Messiah is going to have powerful wonders and signs in order to identify himself to be the Messiah, but he's not going to be able to duplicate this fingerprint. So, take that to heart. And you will not be fooled by the anti-Messiah when he comes. You know, I mentioned the tribes mourning. And that's part of that sign, the tribes mourning. And there's a word there, gi. And it means soil, land, earth. So the verse says, all the tribes of the earth will mourn. That's what most of the English translations say. But it could mean all the tribes of the soil mourn. That's probably not it. Or it could mean all the tribes of the land mourn. So which is the right translation? Now, I have to give them this. If it says all the tribes of the earth, surely those people who have not put trust in Yeshua or who have betrayed him will mourn at his coming. I have no argument with that. But what is the verse specifically talking about? Well, the Jewish New Testament commentary has some good information, and it says this: all the tribes of the land will mourn. And it cites Zechariah 12, 10 through 14, where it says specifically that those who pierced him will mourn. In other words, the Israelite nation will mourn. And it says all the tribes of the land will mourn. Zechariah 12 refers to the day when the people of Israel will mourn over God who has been pierced, as they would mourn over a firstborn son. Here and at Revelation 1:7, where the same passage of Zechariah is cited, Greek "gi" in other English versions is rendered earth, not land. Besides obscuring the New Testament's support for the Jewish people's claim to the land of Israel today, this erroneous translation ignores the fact that Zechariah is clearly speaking of the land of Israel and not the whole earth. So, the more correct translation would not be, "and then shall the tribes of the earth mourn," but rather, "the tribes of the land." And here in John Gill's commentary, he says this: that is the land of Judea, for other lands and countries were not usually divided into tribes. Right? And it talks about all the tribes. It's all the tribes of the land. So what does it mean that tribes are in the land to mourn at his return? There are not tribes in the land now. There's one tribe, right? It's called Israel, but it's the Jews. Jews are Judea. It's Judah, the tribe of Judah. So what is that telling us? Well, it means this. At that time, when he returns, the remnant exodus, of course, has to have already happened for there to be tribes of Israel in the land. This may then be followed up after they kind of like open the way for people of the tribes who are unbelievers to come into the land, and perhaps many of them might take up Judaism, or this new kind of Judaism that is the worship of the coming anti-Messiah. And then, too, some of the original remnant group may revert to unbelief. Now, that part's a little hard to deal with. You know, that goes down a little hard. But why is it that Messiah continues in the book of Revelation to exhort us to overcome? He keeps telling us to overcome. It's because, unfortunately, some who return with us to the land with the remnant group will end up being fooled and will join themselves to the Antichrist. Boy, I hate saying that. But that will happen. And so at Messiah's coming, all unbelieving Israel and all unfaithful Israel, all the tribes of Israel, will mourn at his return. I think it's kind of interesting that the way he phrased this assumes the second Exodus. Well, here's another thing I wanted to talk about. The faithful wise servant and the evil servant. Now, there's different levels of this thing, and I have talked about this before, mentioned that and gave references on that. So I'm not going to talk about everything I've talked about before with this. Let's just read the verses quickly. Yeshua said, "Who then is the faithful and wise servant whom his master has set over his household to give them their food in due season? Blessed is that servant whom his master finds doing so when he comes. Most certainly I tell you that he will set him over all that he has. But if that evil," read worthless, that's what the word means here, "if that worthless servant should say in his heart, 'My master is delaying his coming,' and begins to beat his fellow servants and eat and drink with the drunkards, the master of that servant will come in a day when he doesn't expect it, and in an hour when he doesn't know it, and will cut him to pieces and appoint his portion with the hypocrites. There is where the weeping and grinding of teeth will be." So, we have in this saying two servants. We have a faithful and wise servant, and we have a worthless servant. Let's compare what Messiah says about them. And by the way, let's notice this is all about timing. The preceding verses are all about timing, and this is given to us talking about timing. The faithful and wise servant knows the season. In other words, where he's at in this last days picture. How do we know that? It says, he faithfully serves spiritual food appropriate to the season, or food due at the right time. And he's doing that at the right time. So he knows the time. And so it implies here that the return will happen at a time he expects. Now, we can get that from comparing him to the worthless servant who doesn't know the season. We know he doesn't know because he thinks the master's late when the master isn't late. And he eats, and we can assume then serves out food of drunkards. He's giving out garbage, friends. Garbage. He's eating garbage. That's what he's doing. Spiritual garbage to make you sick. And so the master returns when he does not expect. So we have the existence of these two servants. This all revolves around timing. And it's part, friends, of the Matthew 24 sign. In other words, these two servants should appear, should be in evidence as we move closer towards the end of the final generation. A little more about this, 1 Thessalonians 5. The day of Adonai comes like a thief in the night. But you brothers aren't in darkness, that the day should overtake you like a thief. See, many times people say about that day of Messiah's return, well, he comes like a thief in the night, so nobody can know that. No, the unbelievers won't know that. What the scriptures tell us is, you're not in the darkness. You're a child of the light. You should be able to see what's going on. You should be able to see the time and the season. So, the faithful and wise servant, in keeping with this, must be able to see the time. So, the faithful and wise servant sees the time. The worthless servant doesn't. How are these two servants in evidence in this generation? Did you ever see this book? Well, this is just one edition of many editions of this same book. Over 15 million of these books have been sold. I have no idea how many millions the end number is. It's still being sold, actually. This is Hal Lindsey's book, The Late Great Planet Earth, originally published in 1970. So the final generation began in 1967. This is published in 1970, just a few years later. Well, Hal Lindsey is, to my knowledge, the first popular author to come out with this particular time frame that he sets out here. I do think there were others that had the same idea, opinion, but he's the one that really popularized it with his book. Basically, he says the fig tree in Matthew 24 is the nation of Israel, and it became a nation in 1948, and Yeshua said this generation will not pass away. He says the generation starts in 1948, and he also adds that a generation is 40 years long. So, in his book in 1970, he's saying that that generation would be concluded. In other words, Messiah will have come by 1988. Why are they still selling this book? But they are. As a matter of fact, even after that failed prophecy, they gave this man a TV show, and he's made millions on this, okay? Even after this failed prophecy. Now, he updated his thinking on this, as did the whole evangelical Christian world. And they said, oh, wait a minute, a generation is not 40 years, it's 70 years, and maybe 80 years. They decided they'd give themselves a little more wiggle room this time, all right? For example, we have this article in Charisma magazine, The New Date for Christ's Return, and this is explained. All that stuff that Hal Lindsey told you, that's all true, except it's 70 years now. Basically, that's what it says. He expects the rapture to occur sometime between now and 2021. That's the thinking. That's the current thinking in the evangelical Christian world. And, of course, 2018 is 70 years from 1948. So 2018 is really the target date, the end of the generation, as expressed by Hal Lindsey and others.
Don't go away. Hebraic Insights in the Gospels will be right back after this.
Stand at the crossroads and look.
The insights for this program were taken from a presentation Eliyahu did on Matthew chapter 24 in September of 2017. We decided to use this presentation instead of any new material because we feel that this presentation has become only more relevant since time has gone by. And the references that he made to the events happening at the time only serve to prove the authenticity of the points that Eliyahu was making. Since this presentation came out, we've remastered the Daniel seminar and included it in Zion Fast Track. You can also find out more on his On the Road to Zion programs, available in the Zion Road archives at zion.net. The On the Road to Zion programs air weekdays right here on Zion Road Radio. To check the schedule and see what's playing, go to zion.org. That's TSIYON.org. Hebraic Insights in the Gospels will be right back after this.
Find a rest for your souls. Oh, and you find a rest for your
House of Israel, weep for joy. I brought you out of the nations.
Would you like to hear more of Eliyahu's teachings? Do you have a question or prayer request and would like to get in touch with one of our volunteers for help? Or do you just want to know more about Eliyahu Ben David and Tsiyon Ministry? Visit our website at tsiyon.org, where you can listen to more teachings from Eliyahu Ben David straight from the homepage of our website. Check out our books, DVDs, internet videos, and other social media outlets. Learn more about Eliyahu and the Tsiyon team on the About page. See what our ministry's mission is on the Remnant Vision page. Send a question or prayer request from our Contact Us page. Or click Join Us in the menu bar to learn about our community site, Tsiyon Tabernacle. To find out more about Tsiyon Ministry, go to tsiyon.org. That's tsiyon.org, spelled TSIYON.org.
Tear down your idols and throw them away. Judah and Ephraim.
And now, here's Eliyahu Ben David.
Now, this is very widely held. Here's an article that I pulled out from a Christian news journal, and it's talking about the September 23rd, 2017 so-called Great Sign. Now, I talked about this basically pointing out so many different videos, so much information where people are saying that the rapture will happen on this day. And they often say the reason they believe that is because it's 70 years since 1948. In other words, the generation not passing away. See, that's what they're thinking. So they're thinking, oh, one guy says the rapture will happen, guaranteed. Now, let me tell you now, it's not going to happen. And the tribulation is not going to start on this date. And you can hold me to that, and you're going to know whether I'm right or not, right? You'll know they were wrong. Now, pictured here is Pastor Mark Biltz. And I don't know him personally. He's a Messianic pastor. And in the article, he says, I would suggest that the imminent beginning of the tribulation is definitely a big possibility. Why would he think that? Why would he think that this September 23rd great sign makes the beginning of the tribulation an imminent possibility? Well, just guessing here, but I'm thinking he's probably bought into that 70-year timing. And virtually everyone who is into this September 23rd thing is one of these folks that has bought into that timing. Now, I don't in any way mean to denigrate any of these people. That's not my desire here. However, I do want to point out that they're wrong. And I think that's very important to point out that they're wrong. As a matter of fact, this is not the first time I've done this. You know, since I started my radio program back in 2006, in that year, I explained to everybody on the radio why the generation begins in 1967, not 1948. So I'm not going to rehash all that tonight. If you want to know that, we've got that information. But I told you that then. And then since then, there have been so many of these things. Various signs, different things that have happened. And every time, do you remember the comet Elenin? That was one. 2012. It just goes on and on. Every time that happened, I told you, no, this does not mean the rapture. This does not mean the beginning of the tribulation. And these people just jump from one thing to the next one, to the next one, to the next one. And I know what's in the back of their mind is 70 years from 1948. That's what they're thinking. And that's why they're continually wrong. And that's why I can tell you with authority that all of these signs are wrong. Now, does that mean that none of these things are signs? No. It just means that the teachers out there are plagued with two-dimensional thinking. They know two things. They think they know two things. The pre-tribulation rapture and the tribulation. They don't know anything else about these days. You know, there's a whole range of things that are supposed to happen through this generation. To them, none of these things are a sign of any of these other events. The only thing they ever say whenever there's one of these signs is it's the rapture or it's the start of the tribulation. They don't know what they're talking about. They're worthless slaves. These teachers who are teaching this are worthless teachers. They have to be worthless if what they're teaching is worthless, don't they? In saying that, I'm not attacking their personality. I'm not saying they're, adulterers or liars or any of that kind of stuff. But I am saying what the scripture says. They're worthless because their teaching is worthless. And that's just a fact. The starting date for this generation is 1967, not 1948. So here's what's going to happen. The leading teachers have been wrong about the time. That's what we're saying. And they're going to continue to be wrong about it. According to their time, Messiah will be delayed. Now just imagine how it's going to go as we get farther past the 70-year date and all their predictions keep failing. Do you think people are going to keep following that? At a certain point, more and more people are going to fall away from that. Unfortunately, a lot of those people will lose their faith over this. That is something that will happen. This is going to be a source of unbelief for millions of people. As a result, what's going to happen with many of these teachers, as well as those that follow them, is they're going to start behaving like the world. In other words, eating and drinking with the drunkards. Why not? Eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow you may die, right? That's the thinking if you don't have a hope. So, no wonder they're going to revert to that. And those who are teachers, they're going to continue to spiritually abuse their people more and more. There's been a lot of that already. So what is going to happen at the very end then with these people? Well, many of them are going to go after the false messiahs and will eventually go after the Antichrist. And then when Messiah does return, that's going to catch them completely unaware, because they will have given up on that. That's really what this is telling us about. And then when that happens, the evil servant and everyone following the evil servant, in other words, the false teachers, will be rejected at his coming. And that will not be a fun thing. And many of these people will still cling to the idea that they're believers, but they're going to be rejected. Messiah says so in Matthew 24. So, don't you think it's a good thing to know that in advance? Now, at this point, I feel like I need to give an account of myself and my message in relation to this. As I mentioned, since 2006, I've been broadcasting on the radio that this generation, the final generation, began in 1967 when Israel liberated Jerusalem. This is based on what Yeshua himself said in Luke 21. And so since that time, my message has been consistent about this. And my goal has been to prepare people for the coming of Messiah and the events to happen before that. And so all the teaching that I've been sharing has been consistent with this timing. So for me, 2018 is not 70 years, it's 50 years. See how that works? So when the 70-year generation from 1948 fails, no worries to me, because we knew that was not the right time all along, and that's what we've always told you. Now, to me, I've done this because I wanted to be faithful to Messiah. I just need to say this because you need to understand that there's a cost in doing this. When you tell people things that are contrary to what the majority of people believe, then you lose support. And so throughout this time, I've been telling you the truth, and because of this, I'm continually losing support. People don't want to hear that there's not going to be a pre-trib rapture, but I keep telling them that anyway. They don't want to hear there's not going to be an early end to all of this nonsense, so that they're going to be raptured away, or so if you have to go through the tribulation, it's got to be soon, and it's got to be kind of like a mini tribulation, you know? And so I haven't told them that. And I've told them this impossible thing about the remnant of Israel being regathered to the land. So I've been telling people all these things that are not popular. Why would I do that? This is no way to build a radio station. This is no way to build a following if what you want is a lot of people. The reason I've done it is because it's true. And because I know on that day, I am going to face him. And that's really what it's about. I'm more worried about what he thinks than about what all the people think. And so that's why I'm telling you the truth that I really see. While we cannot know the day or hour, we can know the due season. We see that in this saying of Messiah. A season is part of a year, is it not? So I'm saying we can know the season of the specific year when Messiah will return. We can know that. And in the Daniel seminar, I actually set out certain dates where I expect certain things to happen. Now, that's based on my knowledge of the scriptures. And I believe I do know the year. And as I say, I have revealed that expected timing in the Daniel seminar. And I've made a lot of people really nervous doing that. And probably some of the people who were supporters of the ministry left over that. And I'm sorry that happened, if it happened. However, how can I be a faithful servant if I don't tell you what I know? Should I be afraid to tell you because there's been all these other failed prophecies? You know, this is why this bothers people, right? because there's been all these other failed prophecies. And they're worried that when this fails and they're connected with it, they'll be embarrassed by it. That's what they think. So I understand that. And you know what? That's a test of your faith, if that's what you're thinking. And you're going to have to deal with that, because there's nothing I can do, really, except point out the truth. That's a matter of your faith. You're going to have to come to grips with it. Because as for me, my goal is to be faithful. And so I have to tell you what I know in due season as Messiah is moving me to share. Now, this particular information I've been sitting on for almost 20 years. In fact, I had a lot of this all written out. And in various ways, the enemy has attacked that and taken it away, and I've rewritten it. And it's been a battle. And through this time, a lot has happened. You know, fires, hurricanes, floods. I flatlined twice and came back to continue teaching this message. And I keep teaching the message. I'm going to keep teaching the message. In the Daniel seminar, I promised you that I would give you all the background having to do with this so that you could understand it for yourself. And I've been working on that now for several months. And basically, this is what I'm working on, accompanied by videos. And we're making progress with it. But as I say, you know, this work is attacked. And the enemy throws many obstacles at it. So I think this is why I want to tell you about this, because I just want to ask you to continue to uphold me and this work in prayer until finally this can come out. And I would like it to come out as food in due season, the time when honest-hearted people will be looking for an answer to the problem. When you have this, if you are an honest-hearted person and you love the Word and you will take the time to really look into it, you're going to find that there is an entirely different basis to timing in the Scriptures than what those Christian teachers have ever dreamed of. And you can know it, and it's solid, and you'll be able to see it. So I just ask you to wait, stick with us until this comes out, and review it for yourself, and see what you think. See what the Holy Spirit says to you about it. See what the Word says to you about it. But that's where I'm at on this. And so that's my account of what I've been doing and am doing on this. I think we all know, as we look around in the world and we see what's going on in the world, we are deep into this final generation. And so this question is becoming more and more critical as we move along. I think it is really the time. And I feel compelled, really, to share this information. And I'm working hard to get this out. Remember this? You yourselves know well that the day of Adonai comes like a thief in the night, but you, brothers, are not in darkness, that the day should overtake you like a thief. You should know, and you will know, if you are in the light. So, now we have the question, what will you do until he comes? Messiah says, behold, I come quickly, my reward is with me, to repay to each man according to his work. You know, people give out sometimes because they think, well, he's delaying. We've talked about that. But people also give out for the opposite reason. Oh, it's too far away. I've got time. I can go do this. They do that. But we need to remember on that day that nobody knows, when he comes, his reward for each of us is going to be with him, and he's going to repay each of us according to our work. 6 days you must work. On the seventh day, you must rest. Does that include working for the kingdom? 6 days? I think no matter whatever work we're doing, it does include work for the kingdom. We are his servants. He is the one we should be serving every day. That's what we need to do until he comes, right? That's what needs to happen. Therefore, my beloved brothers, writes Paul, be steadfast, immovable, always abounding in Adonai's work, because you know that your labor is not in vain in Adonai. Work. That's what we can do. Abound in work. Boy, is this not the Christian message, right? It's not the Christian message. It's the Bible's message. Do you think Paul didn't know what he was talking about? Do you think he was not a believer? And he tells us we need to abound in Adonai's work. Why? Because you know that your labor is not in vain in Adonai. This is talking about that day when he comes with our reward. It's going to be according to our work. Our salvation is according to grace. Our reward is according to our work. He who overcomes, I will give to him to sit down with me on my throne. That's breathtaking. You know what? I almost can't read the rest of the verse. He who overcomes, I will give to him to sit down with me on my throne, as I also overcame and sat down with my Father on his throne. May that happen with each of us on that day.
You have been listening to Hebraic Insights in the Gospels. Today's topic is much bigger than anything that we can cover in 1 hour. For this reason, Eliyahu ben David made references to several of his other works related to this topic. If you would like to research this topic out further, you can find much of these materials at Tsiyon.net. For instance, the Daniel Seminar is part of Tsiyon Fast Track, along with more information about preparing for the end times. Eliyahu also came out with a video series entitled The Ages of the World, which goes into the biblical basis for the 1967 timeline more deeply. Some of the scripture verses referenced in this program are 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 8 through 12, 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, verse 16, 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 2 through 5, Revelation chapter 22, verse 12, 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 58, Revelation chapter 3, verse 21, Luke 21, and Zechariah 12. More information on these verses can also be found in Eliyahu ben David's On the Road to Zion programs, which air on this station, Zion Road Radio, weekdays, as well as being available from the Tsiyon.net archives. For more information on the Daniel Seminar, the biblical timing that Eliyahu mentioned, the remnant, and how to prepare for these last days, check out Tsiyon Tabernacle. Sign up is free. Just go to Tsiyon.net. That's TSIYON.net. Or click the membership link on the Zion Road website. New programs on the Gospels will be airing every Sabbath on Zion Road Radio. Join us next Shabbat to learn more in the book of Matthew. Shabbat Shalom.
Stand at the crossroads and look. Ask for the ancient path.